I always thought betrayal would come like a hurricane, loud, violent, unmistakable. What I got instead was a spreadsheet, one quiet, accidental email that changed everything I knew about the woman I married. My name is Evan Carter. I'm 32. I work as a senior operations analyst at a logistics firm in Seattle. My life was balanced, boring even, which I took as a good sign. I had a wife, a condo, and a 5-year plan. The kind of stability most people crave. Her name is Claire. We met at a mutual friend's rooftop party 4 years ago. She was magnetic, smart, charismatic without trying. She worked in marketing, ran marathons, made incredible Thai food from scratch, and somehow always smelled like vanilla and ambition. We dated for 2 years. I proposed with a ring my grandmother left me. She cried. I cried. We got married in the fall under a maple tree that looked like it was on fire. The first year of marriage was, honestly, great. We argued about laundry, what to watch on Netflix, and whether the toilet paper should roll over or under. But we were happy. At least I thought we were. Then last Tuesday happened. It was an ordinary workday. I was at the office late, catching up on invoices. My boss, Brent, had just finished a Zoom call in the glass-walled corner office. As he walked out, he dropped a USB drive on my desk. Pull the shipping analysis for Q2 from this. Email me the charts by 7, yeah? Easy enough? I plugged it in, started digging. The folder structure was a mess. A dozen subfolders, misnamed and outdated. I clicked into one labeled Vendor Breakdowns and saw a file called Allowance 2021 XLSX. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. I opened it. It was a spreadsheet, a clean one. Columns, name, monthly amount, payment method, notes. I wasn't ready for what I saw next. Claire Carter, $5,000 month. Prefers gifts over cash. Monthly dinner at Canley's. At first I froze. A coincidence? Claire is a common name. Maybe it wasn't her, but then I saw the Gmail listed under her row, her Gmail. Our shared home address under discretion notes. I reread it again. Claire Carter, $5,000 a month. Dinner at Canlis, where we celebrated our anniversary. From Brent, my boss. I didn't know how long I sat there staring at the screen. There were other names, 5 more. All women, all younger, most of them with similar notes. In grad school, needs rent help. Only available on weekends. Prefers Venmo, discreet. It wasn't a vendor report. It was a sugar baby ledger, and my wife was on it. My stomach dropped. My ears started ringing, the kind of high-pitched numbness that comes right before people faint. I minimized the file, pulled up a blank Excel sheet, and copied a few dummy charts for show. Then I went to the bathroom and threw up. That night at home, Claire was her usual self. She kissed me at the door, asked about my day, said she picked up sushi because she was too tired to cook. I stared at her for what felt like hours. She didn't look guilty, not even a flicker. She sat across from me at dinner, laughing at a TikTok she showed me, like the ground beneath us wasn't rotting. I couldn't eat. She asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. She suggested a movie. I said I had work to finish. She went to bed around 10. I stayed in the living room, staring at the ceiling, thinking the Claire I knew was gone. Or maybe she was never real. Who was I married to? Around midnight, I opened her laptop. Yes, it was a breach of privacy, but privacy means nothing when reality has been rewritten. She had her emails open, nothing incriminating, but she also had a folder on her desktop titled Taxes 2020. Inside were subfolders labeled Gifts, Clients, and Travel. I clicked on Gifts, Receipts, dozens. Some from stores I'd never been in, jewelry I'd never seen, shoes she never wore in front of me. One of the invoices was for a weekend stay at a spa resort, booked under a different name. Next folder, Clients, Photos. Blurry, some selfies, some restaurant shots. Claire smiling across the table from men I didn't know. One of them was Brent. Another was a man I recognized from a conference she once said was boring and uneventful. Emails, notes, arrangements. Then a document named Rules and Expectations PDF. I opened it. It was a contract. Claire's name, Brent's name, details. Monthly payment, $5,000, 1 dinner a week, no overnights, gifts preferred over cash. My mouth went dry. It was dated 2 years ago, right before we got engaged. I sat there, numb, watching the woman I loved sleep soundly in the next room. All the pieces clicked. The sudden influx of expensive clothes, the random trips, the distance that crept in quietly. She'd never stopped. She didn't leave that life for me. She just got better at hiding it. And now I knew everything. To be continued. I didn't say a word the next morning. I made coffee, kissed her on the cheek, and said I had to get to work early. Inside, I was vibrating. I spent the entire commute in a fog. Traffic passed in a blur, and my grip on the steering wheel had gone white-knuckled. Brent, my boss, her secret patron, walked past my desk that morning and slapped me on the back like he always did. "Let's kill it this quarter, Evan." I said nothing. He had no idea I knew. No idea that just 12 hours earlier I was looking at a photo of him and my wife at a sushi bar a week before our wedding. No idea that the contract with Claire's name was printed and sitting in my messenger bag. I didn't even know what I wanted yet. Revenge. Divorce? Exposure? I only knew one thing. I wasn't going to act without control. So I started planning. The first step was confirmation. She could claim the spreadsheet was fake, that the contract was made under pressure, that the gifts were innocent. So I needed undeniable proof. I installed a small recording app on the home tablet, the one synced with our shared calendar and used mostly to stream music. Over the next 3 nights, I let it sit silently on the shelf. And I listened to her phone calls, to her FaceTime, to one conversation where she spoke softly, almost rehearsed. "It's different now. I'm married, but I could use the bonus. No, Evan works a lot. He's clueless." She was planning to meet another man. I didn't recognize the voice on the call, but I didn't need to. What mattered was the word bonus, like it was a job, like intimacy was a transaction. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched her roll over, breathe evenly. I imagined confronting her, imagined screaming, but something deeper in me resisted. That kind of fire burns fast. I needed to be colder than that. The second step was my exit. I met with a lawyer quietly. After hours, she specialized in high conflict divorce cases. I brought everything, USB drive, printouts, the cloud backup. She reviewed it silently, flipping pages, tapping her pen occasionally. Finally, she looked up. "If this goes to court, you'll win." With this much evidence, the prenup won't protect her from losing support. In fact, we could argue fraud. I didn't smile. "I want it clean. No public mess, no drawn-out court battles," she nodded. "Then we make her sign before she knows it's coming." I signed a retainer, and I waited. Over the next 2 weeks, I became an actor in my own home. I complimented her cooking, watched movies with her, went on a short weekend trip to the coast that she insisted on. The whole time, I documented everything. Travel logs, charges on the card she swore were business expenses, a note in her planner that said Tuesday, Brent, 6 p.m. She didn't even hide it anymore. Because she thought I'd never look. Because I had built the image of the nice husband so well that she forgot I could be anything else. When the lawyer finished drafting the separation agreement, I printed it. Then I waited until the perfect evening, wine, candlelight. I cooked chicken marsala, her favorite. We talked about nothing. The weather, her sister's new job. She looked relaxed. Safe. Halfway through dessert, I slid the manila envelope across the table. She tilted her head. "What's this?" "Your new reality." She opened it, read silently. Then she looked at me with wide eyes. You went through my things? You sold your dignity. I just documented the invoice." "Evan, wait, please, I can explain." "Don't." I stood. "Sign it by Friday. Or I take it to HR, and your face will be the last thing Brent sees before he's fired." She went pale. I walked out, left her sitting in the dining room with a candle burning low and a future she couldn't talk her way out of. I didn't look back, because sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or karma. Sometimes it comes from letting them choke on the silence they left you in. I didn't cry, not when she signed the separation papers. Not when I watched my boss get escorted out of the building like he was allergic to accountability. Not even when Claire walked out of our apartment with her yoga mat, a few suitcases, and the silence of a woman who no longer had control over the story. I didn't cry But I also didn't breathe right for a week. The thing about betrayal isn't just that it hurts, it makes everything else feel suspiciously quiet. You start waiting for something worse. You check your phone, your email, your bank account, because now you know damage doesn't always come with a warning. The first night alone felt like someone had hit mute on the world. No footsteps in the hallway, no Spotify playlist playing from her speaker, no sound of her brushing her teeth like some unremarkable background noise I once thought would last forever. I lay in bed and realized this was the first time I'd heard silence that loud. I didn't tell anyone, not my family, not my friends, not even my barber when he asked how things were going. Same old, because how do you explain that your marriage was a PowerPoint presentation for someone else's transactions? How do you explain that love, real vulnerable love, had a price tag the whole time and you were just the unwitting investor? The office was different too. Some people avoided me, others looked at me with that "I heard but I won't say anything" face. The brave ones asked if I was okay. I wasn't, but I was dressed well, on time, and my inbox was empty, so what more did they need? There was one colleague, Michelle, who just handed me coffee one morning and said, "No one deserves the storm you walked through, but you didn't bring the rain." I don't know why that line stuck, but it did. It was the first moment I felt human again. Claire didn't text again, didn't email, didn't try to have closure. She knew. The door wasn't just closed, it was locked, sealed, and burned behind her. And yet, I still checked her social media. Why? Because some part of me wasn't mourning her. I was mourning the version of myself who believed her. The real damage wasn't the cheating, it was that she cheated so cleanly. While smiling at me over breakfast, kissing my forehead, and folding my laundry, I started second guessing everything. Did she ever love me? Was anything real? Was I ever enough? I started therapy 3 weeks later, not because I was falling apart, but because I refused to pretend like I wasn't bleeding internally. I didn't want to be resilient, I wanted to be real. The therapist, Dr. Hall, asked me something that froze me. What if it wasn't about you being weak, but her being incapable of love without power? That cracked something open. Because up until then, I'd been blaming myself for not seeing it sooner. But what if I had seen it? What if I ignored it because I loved her more than I loved my instincts? That's when the guilt shifted. Recovery wasn't dramatic, it was slow, annoying, filled with moments like walking past our favorite Thai place and choosing not to duck my head, or hearing our song in an Uber and not asking the driver to skip it. One day I realized that I could hear the song without remembering the night we danced to it. I just heard the song. That was the win. A month later, I took a trip, solo, no itinerary. Just a cabin, a few books, and zero notifications. I hiked, I sat by the fire. I listened to silence until it stopped scaring me, and that's where I found it. Peace that didn't need to be explained. When I got back, things weren't better, but I was steadier, more intentional. I stopped apologizing for needing space. I stopped replying to people who only remembered me when there was gossip to reheat. I stopped chasing validation from those who didn't know the weight of betrayal layered in trust. And then I met Lauren. It wasn't some movie moment, no coffee spill, no eye contact across a bookstore aisle, just a regular Saturday, an alumni mixer, and a mutual friend who introduced us. She had kind eyes and a voice that didn't ask for attention. She joked about the tiny wine glasses being high-class shots and laughed at her own sarcasm before I could. It was easy. And that terrified me. We talked, texted, got lunch. She didn't pry, didn't compliment me like she was shopping for emotional discounts. She just listened. When I told her eventually about Claire, her eyes didn't widen. She just said, "Yeah, that says everything about her, but more about how strong you had to be to leave." And for the first time in months, I let someone touch my hand without feeling like they were reaching for leverage. We took it slow. I still flinched sometimes, emotionally. But Lauren never rushed the healing. She just stood beside it. One night we were sitting on her couch, a dumb sitcom playing. She leaned on me and whispered, "You don't have to carry the past for anyone else anymore." I didn't cry, but my heart finally exhaled, because that's when I realized I didn't want revenge. I didn't want redemption. I just wanted a life that wasn't built on proving anything. And I had started building exactly that. It started with a message I almost didn't see, one of those generic email headers. No subject. I hovered. Could have deleted it. But I didn't. I clicked. Evan, I don't expect you to answer this. I saw something that made me think of you, and I needed to reach out. I'm sorry for everything, Claire. That was it. No demands, no explanations, just a name I hadn't said out loud in over 6 months, now blinking in bold on my screen. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, I wasn't, but because it didn't feel real, like watching an old video of yourself. The hair is familiar, the voice is yours, but the person on screen isn't someone you'd recognize in a crowd anymore. That's who Claire had become to me. Not a villain, not a victim, just part of another life. I went about my day, took meetings, replied to clients, cooked dinner with Lauren, watched her laugh at her own burnt toast. She noticed I was quiet but didn't press. Lauren never asked questions to take control, only to connect. You okay? She asked gently. I got an email from Claire. She paused for a beat, then just nodded. You don't owe her a reply. I know. But you're allowed to feel something anyway. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I missed Claire, but because I realized something that shook me harder than anger ever did. I wasn't afraid of her anymore, not of her judgment, not of her silence, not of the version of myself I used to be when I was with her. I lay there beside Lauren, her steady breathing like a metronome for peace, and I let the truth settle in. Claire had power because I gave it to her, and I'd taken it back without saying a word. The next day I ran into her, of all places, a bookstore. Not a dramatic reunion, not fate, just an awkward coincidence with cruel timing. I was holding a copy of Sapiens. She was 2 rows down, staring at the psychology shelf like it held answers to questions she'd only just begun asking. She looked up, saw me, and froze. Evan, it was the first time I'd heard her voice in nearly a year. I could have turned around, walked away, pretended I didn't see her. But I didn't, because the version of me who would have needed that escape no longer existed. I stepped closer. Claire. She blinked hard. I couldn't tell if it was from shock or guilt. I didn't expect. No one does, I said. Until it happens. She half smiled, weak, like muscle memory, not emotion. You look different. I am. There was a beat. The kind that stretches between strangers who used to be something. Can we talk? She asked. Just for a moment. I nodded, and we stepped outside, away from the endless shelves of stories that weren't ours. She didn't start with an apology, and I respected that. She started with honesty. I messed up, not just what I did, but who I became. You don't need to do this. I do. Not for you, for me, she swallowed. You were the only person I didn't perform for. At least, not at first, and then I did, because I wanted to keep the illusion going. I wanted comfort and control and attention, and I thought I could have it all without paying the price. I stayed quiet, but I lost the one thing that didn't ask anything from me except honesty, and I didn't even know how to give it. She looked up at me, eyes glossed but not quite crying. I don't expect forgiveness or closure. I needed you to know that I know what I cost myself. I looked at her, really looked. Not the way you look at someone who wronged you, the way you look at a painting you used to love, now cracked and faded. You once told me, I said, that love should be convenient, that it should never feel like sacrifice. I remember. You were wrong, she nodded slowly. I know. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. This is for you, not legal, not dramatic. Just something I wrote after therapy. I hesitated, then took it, not because I needed answers, but because I wanted to understand the weight she'd finally chosen to carry. We said goodbye with no hug, no tears, no vows of friendship, just a quiet departure between two people who had burned together and walked out of the fire in different directions. That night, I opened the letter. It wasn't long, just 3 paragraphs, about guilt, about reflection, about how she now knows what it means to feel like a guest in your own life. Because she'd hosted so many performances, she forgot what real living felt like. I didn't respond, didn't write back, but I didn't throw the letter away either. because part of growth is knowing you don't have to destroy the past to move on from it. You just have to stop trying to fix it. Lauren and I spent the weekend in the mountains after that. No phones, no plans, just us. She knew something had shifted, but she didn't ask. She didn't need to. Because when we sat by the fire and I reached for her hand, she didn't flinch like Claire used to. She didn't pause. She just held on, like someone who knew I'd already survived the worst and chose to stay anyway. The 1 year mark passed without fanfare. No internal calendar reminder, no whispered grief, no dramatic closure post. Just a quiet Saturday morning, coffee in hand, Lauren asleep beside me, and the sound of the world not demanding anything from me. That's how I knew I'd made it through. A year ago, my life exploded with a click, a file, a revelation, a betrayal that turned my marriage into fiction. Now, my life whispered, not because it lacked meaning, but because I no longer needed noise to feel alive. I used to think healing meant forgetting, but I remembered everything. The lies, the tea she made before cheating, the look in Brent's eyes when they walked him out. I remembered the smell of the office that day, the way Claire didn't argue when I handed her the separation papers, the silence after. But none of it hurt anymore. It was just archived, like a file I could access if I wanted to, but rarely did. Lauren and I never celebrated the day we met. No anniversary dinners, no countdowns, no balloons or posts, but we marked time in different ways. The first time I gave her a key to my place, the first time she bought groceries without asking, the first time she told me I talk in my sleep about mountains, fire, and snow. We moved in together 6 months after the cabin trip. No announcement, just boxes and shelves and the comfort of 2 toothbrushes beside each other like they'd always belonged there. She once asked me, not out of suspicion but genuine curiosity, "Do you still think about her?" I thought for a second, then nodded. Not like you'd expect. Not with anger, not with regret, more like a lesson, a marker. Of what? Of who I was and who I never want to be again. Lauren smiled, reached across the table. You've come a long way. So have you. You chose me. You made it easy. Sometimes people I used to know still ask what happened. Those who knew about Claire. The ones who heard rumors, half-truths, or saw the wreckage from the outside. They ask why I never spoke up, why I didn't go public, why I didn't shame her, why I didn't destroy Brent. And my answer is always the same, because I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always wear a gavel. Sometimes it just wears peace. I live in a home now that I built without compromise. I love a woman who never weaponized softness. I wake up without rehearsing explanations in my head. I walk into work without wondering who's whispering. Brent moved to another city, I heard. Tried to start a new firm, got some early investors, lost most of them when his name showed up in an anonymous expose about workplace incentives. I didn't write it, didn't submit the documents I still have, didn't need to, because I already won. Claire, she reached out one last time, a short message. I'm starting over. I'm in school again. I know I don't deserve it, but I hope you're okay. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because I didn't want to be a character in her new narrative. Some people need the final word. I needed the final silence. I started writing again, not for publication, just journaling. But this time not to survive, to remember that I did, to remember that I could. And that's why I tell this story, not to bleed on paper, not to shame anyone, but because I know someone out there is still stuck in the quiet phase where you haven't screamed, but you're burning inside. And I want you to know, you don't have to explode to reclaim your life. You don't need an audience to move on. You just need the truth and the courage to live like it's enough. Let them whisper. Let them wonder why you didn't shout. Let them watch you rebuild with nothing but calm in your chest and clarity in your bones. That's the revenge. Not in the breakdown, in the rebuild. If this story felt like yours, hit subscribe. For every one of us who rose quietly after they tried to write us out, for the ones who walked through fire and never looked back,